Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Pacific Summit's conversation on purpose-driven businesses. My name is Shalagna Dasgupta. I'm a managing director with Accenture's talent and organization practice here in the West. What that means in simple words is I get to partner with a number of our most inspiring businesses here in the West, helping them with anything truly human in their business. Not a bad way at all for me to live my own personal purpose. I'm really excited to share the screen today with Linda Rendle, the CEO of Clorox. Linda, welcome to the conversation. Very excited to have this conversation with you.
Happy to share the screen with you as well, Shalagna.
Great. So Linda, I thought we could break the conversation up into about two big chunks. We'll start with just talking about purpose in business in general and getting your leadership perspective there. And then we'll zoom in a little bit more on Clorox. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Awesome. So let's start with just purpose. Linda, I want to align dictionaries. It's something that we're talking about a lot lately. Business purpose, growth with good intentions, conscious business, responsible business. And then we've also had a really profound moment coming through the pandemic with individuals looking for their personal calling, their personal purpose at work. What does purpose mean to you at work?
To me, it's simply the why. It's why we do what we do. And that can be in a company level scale, why a company does what it does, or at a personal human individual level, why a person decides to do what they do. And I think it's clarifying for people also to see what they expect out of you. What they expect out of you as an individual or what they expect out of a company should be defined in a company's purpose.
I love that. I love that. When we talk to individuals through our survey work, we exactly get that answer. It answers my why. And I think the little bit of extension we get from there is it helps me with my creative expression. It's the emotional connection I have to my work. So I love what you said in very simple words. So let me actually move to the next one. And this is about the role of a CEO in driving purpose in an organization. Linda, when we looked at some of our research stats pre-pandemic, the numbers of CEOs saying that, yes, it is my job to drive purpose in my business was about 50-ish%. That number through the months has gone up to the 70s. So clearly, everybody's looking for purpose at work, but then the CEO community, your peer group, definitely sees it as a big component of their new job, the modern CEO. What do you think is the role of the CEO? Now that you know it is your job to drive purpose, what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, if you have to be clear on why your organization does something, you better be the spokesperson of that why. Why do we show up and why do we have the goals that we do? And why do we have the teammates that we do? And why do we serve the consumers we do? That is absolutely first and foremost my job as CEO to be clear with that. As a company, and I think every leader, whether or not you have the title of CEO or not, it's incredibly important to make sure that you articulate that for people and your stakeholders so everybody's clear. And I would say, I'm thrilled to see what has happened as a result of the pandemic with more and more people embracing purpose, and that purpose plays a role not only in just the financial parts of driving a company, but of course, what we do in our communities. We are not entities that exist in some type of, financial ether realm. We serve people. We are people businesses, and that's incredibly important then, the role that purpose plays in living that and ensuring that you can do what you need to for your shareholders, but also your other stakeholders, the communities that you serve and work and live in, the people that buy your products or services. And so my role as a CEO is to make sure that the why is ingrained in everything that we do, including the goals that we set and the outcomes that we drive.
I love how simply you said we serve people. I'm going to steal that with pride. Linda, there's this beautiful dance between business purpose and personal purpose. When we look at our employee community, so many of them want to live their purpose at work, and we've seen that when they do, they're more resilient, more engaged, more motivated, more innovative. And then when we look at it from a business perspective, there is, of course, all of the things that you said. We serve people, and so businesses have their own sort of sense of purpose. I'm going to ask you a tricky one. Do you think it is the business's job to help their employees find their purpose? Or do you think it is the employee's job to find the best employer that matches most closely with who they are?
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to answer it in an even trickier way. I think it's a mutually beneficial journey we're on together. I think a company can't find and unveil its purpose without the people that sit around the table and help run that company, all the way across the board. It doesn't, you just don't have to be a leader in the company to do that. But then, of course, we offer a value proposition to the people who come and choose to spend the majority of their waking hours with us. And then we would love to help them uncover their purpose. And of course, when a great relationship happens between a teammate of ours and the company is when those things are well aligned. So one of the things that we do in recruiting is we talk actively about what our purpose is. We talk a lot about our values and we say, is this a place you want to work? Knowing that. And we spend a lot of time probing on people's values in particular. A lot of times they're not able to articulate their purpose, but they are able to articulate their values and a culture that might help them thrive. So I think it goes both ways. It's an organism that works together, and when there's a perfect fit and match in that, it works really well. And I think the good thing about purpose is that it transcends things like diversity and attributes that way. It allows people to have commonality that they might not see in the things or the experiences that they have, but it's an intrinsic motivator and driver that can bring us all together.
Oh, I love that. And I'm going to ask you more questions about what you said about individuals and how I think you've made purpose more accessible by introducing values. So good segue to Clorox. Linda, you became the CEO smack in the middle of the pandemic when you were going through a crazy amount of growth, extremely high consumption. And yet one of the first things that you went after was writing your purpose and your values. Very inspired as a people practitioner myself, and I'm sure a lot of people notice that. Would love to hear the story of why was that your first priority, and a little bit about how you came to a purpose statement, which I absolutely love. We champion people to be well and thrive every single day. Simple and powerful, and it demonstrates all of your brands, which are pretty diverse. So tell us the origin story of how you came here.
Yeah, we didn't want to lose a moment. And we had a moment in the pandemic where it was really clear to people what our purpose was. And although we hadn't put it in words or defined it in a way where everyone had a common way to articulate it, we felt it. Every one of our almost 9,000 people around the world could tell you in a bunch of words what we were doing during that moment in the pandemic when we were serving people. And what we said is, what a moment to then codify that and clarify that and put it into a statement that we can all agree upon. And we felt that was really important at this moment because when it's clear, that's the moment that you can grab people's hearts, right? And you can then set it out for the other things that we'll experience together as a company. So that was why we prioritized it. And I think also too, we realized the pandemic is forcing changes on companies, and in Clorox in particular, we have to be faster. We have to serve people around the world in ways where their lives are changing so dramatically and so quickly, we have to be able to react. So without clarifying how we operate in that new world, we felt like, that wouldn't be a place where we were able to maximize our impact. So that was why we prioritized it. One, it was a point where it was utterly clear to us what it was. And second, it served as a guide map in a dynamic and changing world, and one that we have to actively participate and collaborate with to drive change.
I love it. And Linda, also tell us, you didn't let the crisis go waste, especially because what happened to mankind, or human race rather, is the need for a lot of your products. So I love that you optimized on that moment. Tell us a little bit about the process your leadership team and you followed in actually articulating it and making sure that everybody stacked hands on it.
Yeah, at the beginning, we articulated it in words that weren't where we landed. We champion people to be well and thrive every single day. We set clear goals for ourselves around the idea of that purpose. We will do everything in our power to get as many of our products to people around the world. That meant, first and foremost, keeping our people safe. And we articulated how important that was and getting the right protocols in place. And then once we did that, ensuring that we left no stone unturned to get people products they needed in our sourcing group, and all the people's responsibilities became, the why they were doing it became very clear. And then we got very clear on what we needed them to do to achieve that. And once we got all of that in place, then we stepped back and said, okay, well, what are we actually doing in this? Why are we doing it? And a group of us put the words to that. And then we spent time in the organization saying, does this actually mean something to you? And the words we've expressed it, is it actually living all of those things that we did? And we heard resoundingly, yes. This actually articulates in a way where I'm very clear why I am, up tonight at midnight, or coming in and working, shifts at our facilities, even though my family is nervous about COVID, to help those people. So I think that was really clear. And then we got to different outcomes as a result. We at times experienced 500% increases in demand in parts of our business, just things that we've never experienced before or even close. And it took that why, that, when people were really tired during the height of this, from their family situations, from dealing with the crisis, and then of course from work, to really say, this is why I'm doing this and why I'm willing to dig deep. I know I needed that many times during this. Like you said, starting as a CEO during this time was interesting, but I could rely on turning back to that purpose and saying, I'm doing this and it's all worth it, because it's not about me. And it's not about, anything that is selfish or not meaningful. It's really about helping people do something in their lives right now at a time that, like you said, humanity was stretched to the max.
No, for sure. And I think, related, I want to share a quick story with you. When people start to see that, of course, within the boundaries of your organization, but even outside, I remember being at the local grocery store looking for one of your brands to clean, and right in the middle of the pandemic, and just asking the person at the counter, like, are you doing okay? And are you, it's the middle of the pandemic, it must be really hard. And she looked me in the eye and picked up the thing of Clorox, and she's like, well, who would be giving this to you if I wasn't here? So I think a lot of the energy that you created with your purpose statement, not just across your organization, it definitely did spread across the whole ecosystem. So kudos. And I enjoyed experiencing that little moment.
Well, and that checkout person was clear on their purpose. Isn't that amazing too, right?
It is.
That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So Linda, I think I'm gonna keep going a little bit on people and bringing them along, because when we look at it, again, just giving you some data here, almost 63% of the global workforce, they believe that their company is going to do something that's going to serve the community and serve the planet. That sentiment is actually a lot more pronounced across the millennial population, where nearly like 85% of them are like, I will not work for a company that's not purpose driven. And I love that about this generation. I'm excited about what our kids are going to do. Just wanted to ask you, you articulated the purpose, you tested it out with your leadership team, you tied it back to values. How did you make it accessible to the thousands of people that work for you? How are you bringing them along?
Yeah, and we're at the beginning of the journey on that. That is something we try to do every single day. And what we articulate is, when we tie their work to the goals of the company, we articulate that in why, the whys and purpose. And we make it very clear how what they do individually contributes to that purpose and to those individual goals. And I think that's the other thing that's really important in this. You have to make it tangible for people.
Yeah.
And so we have set not only some, this is how it feels to live your purpose, and this is how it feels to have be part of an organization that shares these types of values, but actually here's what we're going to hold ourselves accountable to, metrics wise. And that's important to a company because it drives clarity. And so it makes it really real, and it doesn't make it too, some people who are, I think, don't understand purpose think it's fluffy. Yeah. And there's actual numbers behind it and what we're trying to achieve. And when you can say to somebody, your purpose, our purpose is this, and your goal is to get to this for us to live it, it becomes really real and clear. But we're on a journey on that, connecting that work for folks, helping them to understand how things contribute. And then what's really important is that they have to see consistency, wherever people are 100% able to sniff out the fakes and really able to say if you don't do something that is consistent with that. And I think that's what we've been trying to ensure that we do, is all of the dots have to connect. It can't be 2 or 3 or just what you say publicly. It has to be in every single action they experience from you, with their people manager, with their comp and their benefits, to how we express ourselves in the world with consumers. All of that has to be consistent. And that's what we are focused on every day, is making sure that overall experience makes sense to people. They experience us in the way that we would intend our purpose to be expressed in the world.
I love it. Linda, would you have an example, just so that people can touch and feel some of what you're doing? Maybe an example of a goal and what type of a measure you've taken against it that people can relate to?
Yeah, let's maybe take one across each one of the spheres. So let's start with a business goal. If we want people to champion people to be well and thrive every single day, we would expect that we would want to have a bigger impact with our products. So we got very clear that we wanted to grow market share. In order to express that as a business goal, market share is important. That means we're winning with those people. They're choosing us, that we're doing something for them meaningful in their life. So we had real clarity on market share matters. And that's an indicator that we're being successful.
Yeah.
And then you move into, well, if people are well and thrive, they have to have a social system that supports that. So we set very clear representation goals, inclusion goals. We set goals around engagement. We do an annual engagement survey with our team to say how engaged are our teammates around the world, and then learning, their areas of engagement or places we can do better. And there's always places we can do better. Mm-hmm. And then making things like public commitments on inclusion and diversity. For us, it was supporting a lot of the causes after George Floyd's murder around supporting our Black communities and ensuring we were investing in Black businesses, and ensuring that there was legal justice done in cases that people have been experiencing, as an example. So those things are very concrete. You go from a business goal to now, okay, a society has to be well and thrive. And then the planet has to be well and thrive. And we set very clear sustainability goals. For example, one goal we set was to reduce 50% of the virgin plastic and fiber packaging we have by 2030. And all of our teams now have marshaled behind how we do that. And everyone in the company owns it. All of our 9,000 people own that goal and their role in doing that. So kind of that's how they all come together to live your purpose. And it has to be, we drive good business results. We have to do good for our communities. And then we have to have a healthy planet for people to live on. And we must set concrete goals in all of those areas.
I love that. So I can actually touch and feel purpose, which originally started out as being a little fluffy, to really, really an accessible goal that I can live every single day. Absolutely love it. Linda, I also really liked what you said about being authentic and not just lip service, because for sure, if we say we're going to do something and we're not consistent, you almost leave people worse off than not having a purpose. So I love that. There's something I'm observing as a little bit of a pattern, Linda, in what you're doing since you became the CEO. You're driving these amazing priorities, purpose-driven priorities inside the bounds of your company. But I love what you're doing outside. The Safer Today Alliance, the US Plastics Pact to drive towards the circular goals. I love some of the collaborations that you're going after. So you're actually taking what you're driving for the planet and multiplying it across the ecosystem. Tell us a little bit about that strategy.
Yeah, this is something I don't take full credit for in any way, shape, or form. We have a long history of leaders, CEOs in our company, our last one being Ben O'Dore, who believed in the impact of having a partnership. We can't do it alone as a company. And these goals are not just about creating competitive advantage. Again, they're about creating a healthy world and healthy communities. And so those partnerships allow us to use the power of other organizations to do things we might not do well, just to scale, and then hopefully make real change. The Safer Today Alliance is really about keeping people well as we return back to life. And if we can create a set of partners who are really viewing the world in that way, it's about creating safety for people. And that's exactly what we've done. That when they know if they are going to take a flight, that they're safe and well, if they enter into a particular hotel or entertainment venue, they're safe. When they return to watching sports, they can do that in a safe way. And we can do that alone. We can promise people things with products, but we can only control so much. So that power of collaboration and partnerships is important. And then things like the US Plastics Pact, incredibly important. We are not going to get done what we need to for the planet if we don't all work together. That is absolutely not an individual effort. It's one we're deeply committed to our individual goals on, but it's going to take all of us working that. And I think that's a theme you're going to hear from us, and I hope from very many. This is, we're all in it together.
I love that. Linda, on the first one, of course, the Plastics Pact is a whole other thing, but on the Safer Today Alliance, how easy or not easy was it to collaborate? I mean, are you seeing a sense of openness to come together towards some of these goals across the rest of the CEO community?
Yeah, I think more than ever, that's true. I think people at this moment, when faced with their own humanity, and to see what happened in our world, realized, this is a time where helping others is incredibly inspiring to them and something that they want to do. So I would say we've had huge openness to that. And whether or not it's right for a particular business to do that specific iteration of it, I would say not one person has not wanted to return the phone call and have a conversation. And then some say, I share your vision and I want to do it together. And then something like that is born. But we look for organizations that share common values, whose purposes are generally aligned. And then that always, to the point of what I made earlier around an employee and a workplace, it's the same thing. That's really when you can get together and create something like the Safer Today Alliance that allows us to communicate our joint messages and what we're trying to get done together.
Love it. Okay, I'm going to take that thread and actually pull it into California, our home. We're on the Pacific Summit, so we've got to talk a little bit about California. Linda, maybe what is one goal, one purpose-driven goal that you have in mind that you hope to drive with fellow CEOs here in California?
Yeah, I think it comes down to what makes California super special. And there's lots of things that make California special, but I think a standout is the diverse community we have. And I think this is a point where at the center of, well, I'm going to call it this is, not being very humble as a Californian, but kind of a center of innovation where we can take a diverse community with different, expressions of that diversity, whether it be gender, race, ethnicity, religion, background, experiences, and bring them together to solve the problems that we need to solve. And I think that is something California can uniquely do. And we can take that diversity and get to better outcomes and solutions and then work together, because we tend to be very innovative, focused, kind of companies that value that and really make significant change. So I think us as Californians, we have that unique perspective and advantage, and we should take advantage of it and work together to do that and continue to be really the center of innovation, but all based on the fact that we have an incredible population to help us do that brings different perspectives. And I value that at Clorox. As I talked about, we set particular goals as it comes to diversity and inclusion, because we know we get the best ideas when we have a diverse population doing that. And I think that's what we can do together as Californians.
I love it. Linda, maybe just a follow-on question on that point. Looking at, the key industries here in California, some of the industries that were most deeply impacted through COVID actually had some of our most diverse workers, community, like hospitality, like food. And so there were a number of people that lost their jobs. And I think that the number of women that decided that the toss up between taking care of the family and being able to pay their bills, lots of women left the workforce. And if you double click on that, it's actually a lot of women of color who decided to, stay home or had to stay home because of what happened to their business. Any thoughts on what can we do to bring all of that workforce back in California and even beyond? I mean, why just California? But any thoughts and your leadership perspective on bringing that diversity back in?
Yeah, I think it's a total tragedy, and we were already so far behind in representation, and so to take a step back is just devastating. But I think it has to return to, one, creating opportunities for people. And that can be opportunities that we all create as companies. So making sure we have the right recruiting practices in place, that we're getting diverse candidate slates. And then importantly, what people are demanding is different now. And I think companies have to open their eyes to that, and recognize that hybrid work is here to stay. That it's always been difficult for families, and particularly for moms, to balance everything they have going on. And there's no reason now, with technology and others, to not be able to be more accommodating to what people have in front of them and create other additional opportunities. And then I think particularly then when we get them in the workforce too, we have to have development plans, and they have to have sponsors, and we have to help them on that journey as they re-enter so they can be successful. And I just think that's, incredibly important to us. We're working on that now. We've been able to increase our recruiting with minorities and women minorities, and we need to continue to do that. And then we need to create a great space for them where they can absolutely thrive at work. But I would just say, gosh, we have a lot of work to do. And unfortunately, that big step back means we're going to have to put even more effort in over the next couple of years to close that gap again. And then, for everybody, support businesses, support small businesses, restaurants. As we get back into our offices, we've been talking about that, getting back and supporting these folks who've given their life to run these great businesses, and showing them all the support that we can. Individuals can make a difference in this too.
100% agree. And I'm going to stay with that thread around diversity because it's super close to heart. Linda, we're so excited to have a woman CEO for a consumer goods brand that's a household brand. Super exciting to have you join that very elite group. What can we do more of, specifically in California, which is a tech innovation hub? Don't have a lot of women CEOs. What can we do differently to create more stories like yours? Every time a story like yours happens, a lot of little dreams get a little bit more bold and a little bit stronger. So what could we be doing more of to have more women CEOs?
Yeah, we have to, I think we have to change the narrative of what a CEO is. I didn't see myself as a CEO earlier in my career because I looked at what that was, or what I thought it was required to be, and I didn't see myself. And I thankfully had a lot of mentors along the way and bosses along the way who helped me see that actually I could make a good CEO, even though I didn't see a lot of people who look like me. So I think it's important for us to actually define what a CEO is and what a leader is, and how anybody can do that, and why experiences and skills, rather than maybe how you think or approach a problem or something, are as important. So I feel lucky about that. And I personally spend time with my team, and even my kids, talking to them about that. How can you define, make sure that you understand really what is required, not what you see. Because I think that's the first part. People have to be able to see themselves in those positions. Second, we need to give people development and training plans, and we need to have inclusive practices at work. It is very easy to prioritize kind of older school, people who aren't afraid to speak out. And there can be cultural differences in that. And just because you're quiet, I'm an introvert. It's part of the reason I didn't see myself as a CEO. Super big introvert, would rather be reading than doing anything else. But I realized, and I had people who helped me understand, that being a terrific listener was actually much more important than what I said. But we need to create those types of environments where different styles can thrive and different backgrounds can thrive. And then again, we need people who are willing to sponsor and help people create those careers. And we need to have development plans in place, et cetera. So I think it takes, at every point in a person's career, somebody being willing to do all of those things. And it starts with companies creating an inclusive culture. And inclusive does not mean you just have hiring practices that bring diverse talent in. It means when they get there, their differences are valued and are seen as an advantage, not as something to be molded and changed.
I love it. I'm going to ask you the flip side of that question, Linda. So we answer the question more from a company perspective. What can companies do? I know of at least 5 amazing young women that are dialed into this conversation right now. What would you tell young women executives? How should they lean into the idea of I could be a CEO someday, or I could be a C-level executive someday. What should they be doing more of that we potentially don't do enough of?
I think there's a number of things I've learned along the way, and I'm still practicing. Let's be clear. I think first and foremost, know who you are, and know it with utter clarity, and accept it for what it is. And then figure out what you do really well that can add value. And again, in my own journey, I learned that being a good listener was actually really important. And that being an introvert could be an advantage in that way. That I tend to listen with an ear towards emotional feeling, not just logical, has helped me a lot of times. Understand when, even in a business decision, somebody is saying something their heart doesn't feel, and I can probe into it. So I tend to have a good gut because of my emotional side. And I've just gotten really clear with who I am and how I can maximize that. So I would encourage everybody, know who you are and be the very best version of yourself. Don't try to be someone that you are not, because you will utterly fail at that. I guarantee you will. The second is have courage to take on the big assignment and push yourself to take risks, even though that's not comfortable. And not all personality styles want to do that. I think that is a common thread. I was willing to do things in my career that didn't seem logical to me, and I'm so glad I did that. Whether taking a different job that I didn't really understand why it was necessary, etc. That always worked out for me. And then I think very clearly state your values and find a company that wants you to express those values in that way. And that allowed me to do things like courage to speak up when things weren't going well, even though it wasn't popular opinion. I wasn't afraid to do that because, again, I knew who I was and I knew what my values were. And then, I think also for women is recognize that you're never 100% ready for anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's a common trait across a lot of women and a lot of men too. They feel I'm never going to put myself up for something that I am not 100% confident in myself in. And that's just, no one's ever 100% ready for anything. We're always on a journey. We're always learning. And so give yourself permission to take the risk, lean into yourself, bet on yourself, and then find a group of people who can, be your mirror and help you get through that. I have advisors. They're not the people you would expect. They're not CEOs, they're family friends I've known forever, or there's a former assistant I have who can tell me exactly what she sees and what I'm doing. And that's really important, that you have safe spaces to help, explore yourself.
I love that. Sometimes when we think of mirrors, we think that they're going to just tell us what's not good about us. But sometimes our mirrors tell us, hey, you got this, you can actually get this job, or you should go and apply for this. So I love that. I think we are out of time, Linda, over here, but thank you so much for spending the time. I read about what you're doing with the Warriors and the Chase Center. So I'm going to use a sports analogy and say you're going to keep playing offense and experiencing double-digit growth while building a purpose-driven business. And today's personal favorite, serving people. So thank you so much for the time. Really enjoyed the conversation. And I am going to hand over to Shannon Dean, Chief Citizenship Officer of California Water Services, for the next segment. Thank you.